Good morning. Welcome to PIL webinar number 77, Around the Water Cooler. It shouldn't be this hard. I'm Monica Taylor with the DHS Procurement Innovation Lab, also known as the PIL, and today I'm joined by my colleagues David Jablonski and Chase Nectel. Hey David, you wouldn't believe it. My plants are finally starting to flourish. I mean, the flowers in my garden are looking amazing.
That's awesome, Monica. I really wish my garden would cooperate. I don't think my plants like me anymore.
David, maybe you should nourish your plants with some soft skills.
Soft skills, Chase? Are we talking about plants or people?
David, it shouldn't be this hard. Maybe some of the ways we tend to our plants can be a way to tend to our relationships.
Oh, that's very good insight, Chase. You're just blossoming with creativity today. Now, we'll talk about our plants later. We have a webinar to run. But today, we are going to discuss strategies and tools to strengthen relationships and build an environment that allows all members of the procurement team to thrive, contribute, and be heard. These collaborative relationships have a direct impact on the procurement experience and the mission.
But before we jump into this great topic, let's do a little housekeeping. Chase?
Sure, Monica. So please sign in with your full name, component, and DHS email address using the chat pod to prove you attended this webinar and get your credit. If you didn't type your name, component, and email address before me talking right now in the chat pod when you entered this room, please go ahead and type that in now. I see a lot of people are doing that already. So for example, if I were David Jablonski, I would type in, as you see on your screen, david.jablonski at hq.dhs.gov. And I would put his component before that, NGMT. You see that in front of you. So just copy that format and go ahead and put that in the chat pod so you get your credit. Also, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to type them in here. We have dedicated PIL staff monitoring these questions. They will get to your question if we do not. We don't want to make this a one-way communication only where the audience asks the PIL questions. We encourage you to address each other's conversations and have a dialogue that way. Talk to each other. Feel free to respond to your colleagues when there's something you want to address. Put that in the chat. Now, for links, you'll see links to the PIL and links about today's topic throughout this webinar. Take a look at that link section when you need those links. As for files to download, you could download the documents that we'll be going over today, and you can access them at any time. The actual solicitation and other samples used from today's webinar are available here, and you'll see that up in that download section. And you can click on the upper right-hand dropdown and simply hit download all. So then everything will just get downloaded and you don't have to go one by one. That can get annoying. So the slides from today's webinar are available there as well. As for closed captioning, this should show a visible record of the audio. So if you need closed captioning, that is available for you. As for poll questions, you're going to see some poll questions that pop up throughout the presentation today. So keep an eye out and be sure to respond. We want to have your participation. We want to hear what you have to say. As for and there are 2 polls up now. So take those polls now. Do it. Take the polls. For full screen, there is a full screen option. If you'd like to enlarge the screen, hover over your mouse in the top right corner and you'll see those 4 little arrows. Click to enlarge and then click it again to minimize if you don't want full screen anymore. So on this next slide, previously on the PIL, we asked, why is the PR late? Where we walked through the entire federal budget process from when an idea is born all the way through to it being signed by the president and carried out by the program offices. We shared reasons the PR may be late and also shared resources and ways contracting officers and program managers could prepare and respond to those situations. A recording of this webinar, as well as all of the previous 76 webinars, 76, are available on the PIL's DHS Connect webpage, also available in the links section that I just talked about. Now let's take a look at those poll results.
First one, how many PIL webinars have you attended?
Let's see. Oh, 14%. This is my first. Welcome, newcomers. 2 to 4 seems to be the majority, I think, for 38%. Thank you for coming again. We really love having everybody here. 5 to 7 is 20%. That's a lot of webinars. Way to go, everybody. And over 10 is 18%. Thank you for continuing to attend these webinars. We really love having you here and your engagement. For our second question, what is your primary role within the acquisition community? Looks like 29% are contracting officer or contract specialist. 50%, 153 of you are program manager, core, or technical or evaluator. Welcome. 0% are procurement attorneys. We always love having our procurement attorneys in. Procurement analyst, price analyst. That makes up about 3% of us, 10 of you, welcome, and others, 17% of you. Everybody, welcome to this webinar. We are so excited to have you here today with us.
All right, thank you, Chase. David, can you introduce our presenters today?
Yep, happy to. So with us today, we have Joshua Jordan. Joshua Jordan is the head of contracting activity with the Department of Transportation, Federal Railroad Administration. Can you say hi for everyone, Josh?
Good morning, David. Good morning, everybody.
All right, good morning, Josh. We'll hear more from Josh shortly. And we also have Jade Gaston with us from the DHS United States Secret Service. She's a team leading contracting officer there. Jade, can you say hi to everyone?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being with us, Jade.
Content around the water cooler, it shouldn't be this hard. Around the water cooler, it's our standing theme for all of the webinars for fiscal year 24. All right. This is the fourth webinar in the series, and so far we are receiving overwhelming interest. The webinars featured this year are topics that have been shared through both direct and indirect feedback from the acquisition workforce, through our coaching engagements, boot camps, and particularly from our procurement culture survey itself. So we hope you've enjoyed the series, and we look forward to you continuing to be around the water cooler throughout the year.
All right, now the DHS Chief Procurement Officer, Mr. Paul Courtney, as he just said, has those 4 strategic priorities for the contracting workforce, and they are listed here as follows. We just talked about the empowering the workforce, energizing partnerships through collaboration, inspire innovation to enhance mission capability, and to enrich the DHS procurement experience. So as you just heard from Paul just a couple of seconds ago, today's webinar really hits upon all 4 of these strategic priorities.
Looking back through the PIL webinar archives, we found a few webinars that are related to topics we're going to cover today. These webinars share the importance and impact of collaboration and relationship building. You can watch these recordings on our PIL DHS Connect site anytime after this webinar. Check them out for us.
All right. On today's budding agenda, we're going to start with our FAR Guiding Principle of the Month. You'll then hear from Josh Jordan from the Federal Railroad Administration. He's going to share how he knocks the frost off and fosters relationships within all levels of the organization to improve the procurement experience. You'll then hear from Jade Gaston about the unexpected blooms within an office at the United States Secret Service and learn the tools that they are using to work with their program office to better track requirements and identify areas of opportunity. Then you'll hear from our PIL Customer Engagement Lead, David Jablonski, who will share the fiscal year 24 Procurement Culture Survey preliminary results.
Now, each month we're highlighting a section from FAR Part 1. Now, this month's FAR Part 1 phrase of the month is from FAR 1.102-2C1, which says that an essential consideration in every aspect of the system is maintaining the public's trust. Not only must the system have integrity, but the actions of each member of the team must reflect integrity, fairness, and openness. Now, the foundation of integrity within the system is competent, experienced, and well-trained professional workforce. Accordingly, each member of the team is responsible and accountable for the wise use of public resources, as well as acting in a manner which maintains the public's trust. Fairness and openness require open communication among the team members, internal and external, customers, and the public. And we're going to hear a lot about that all day today with Josh and Jade.
All right, thank you, David. Josh, are you out there? We are so excited to have you on today's webinar. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, Monica. And again, good morning to everybody that's attending today's webinar. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you again for the invitation. I'm Josh Jordan. I am the Director of Acquisition at the Federal Railroad Administration. FRA is one of 11 component agencies that make up the Department of Transportation. My office leads all things acquisition, procurement, and contracting for FRA. And at the department level, I also serve as the category manager for DOT's professional services category, where we monitor and analyze DOT spending in the major and minor professional service subcategories. And also we aim to identify opportunities to streamline the way that the department is purchasing those professional services through pre-existing contracts and managed spend. So happy to be here today, Monica. Thank you.
All right, Josh, it sounds like you are doing a lot of things there. It sounds hard, but we're going to talk about why it shouldn't be this hard. So glad to have you on today. Let's jump right into that content. So, Josh, on our on our very first webinar in the Around the Water Cooler series, webinar number 74, is my program manager from outer space. That webinar, we shared how the word acquisition had many different meanings depending on who's using the word. And so in that webinar, it discussed what it meant to be a program manager as a part of the acquisition program process and how it differed from what it meant to be a contracting officer who's awarding the contract. Now, Josh, I know you weren't there for that webinar, but maybe, I don't know if are you familiar with DHS and maybe this potential program pivot?
Yes, I'm very familiar with DHS and this program pivot as well. I used to work at FEMA and prior to working at FEMA, I used to work at DOI, and that's actually where I met one of your PIL partners, Monica, Mr. David Jablonski. Hello, David. We worked together at DOI for a number of years as contracting officers, and then I left there and joined FEMA back in October 2019, just at the start of FY20. And one of my very first assignments as a CO at FEMA was the pivot operations and maintenance procurement. That's where I got my first introduction to the PIL, making it my very first formal PIL project. So although I was not able to attend webinar 74, I did get to watch the recording and I enjoyed every minute of it.
All right, thanks, Josh. And for those out there in the audience, as you see some of the titles of the slides there, these are things we hear around the water cooler. What happened to my previous CEO? And we see that Josh was a previous CEO at FEMA who then went somewhere else. So thank you, Josh. All right, we'll go to the next slide. For those of you who weren't on PIL webinar 74 or didn't watch the recording, you heard that Josh watched the recording, so the recordings are out there. Pivot was a system of record to manage claims and policies for the National Flood Insurance Program. Now, Josh, how were you brought up to speed on all of the things that occurred prior to contracting office involvement?
Yeah, so I remember meeting with my branch chief when she first assigned this to me. And, she asked if I ever heard of the Procurement Innovation Lab, the PIL. And I said, kind of, sort of, maybe heard a little bit, never, really worked with them. She said, okay, well, I got the perfect procurement for you. And she introduced me to the Pivot program and mentioned that the program office had previously developed the Pivot system using a development contract that they put in place in conjunction with the PIL. And now it was time for that Pivot system to move from development over into production and sustainment, and it needed a contract to do that. So that was what we were charged to do, was to put together the Pivot operations and maintenance contract to sustain that newly developed Pivot system.
Okay. And Josh, did you work with the program office prior to receipt of the procurement package?
So for Pivot, a little bit, but not as much as I normally would have. And that's just because of the timing of when I joined FEMA. I pretty much inherited it from my predecessor, and this was the first procurement that I got upon joining the agency. So the procurement package was pretty much already developed when I came on board. There was a draft acquisition plan, draft eval plan, market research was already done. Of course, there was draft statement of objectives and IGCE. So by the time I picked it up, we just needed to finalize those documents and also develop and finalize the solicitation. But even so, the program office, though, was not on their own while they were creating those initial documents before I came on board. I think FEMA's procurement shop, they do a really good job of engaging program offices very early in the acquisition process, well before program offices submit a PR package. And FEMA does that through their portfolio managers. And these are, 1102 or 1101 series professionals who sit in the procurement office, but they work primarily with the program offices to advise and assist them in forecasting their procurement needs and then also developing their supporting documentation before that PR package is ultimately submitted and assigned to the CO. So essentially they serve as liaisons between the program and the contracting officer, and they really know how to speak that language of both program and contracting office. So they were, I had the pleasure of that program office being able to work with those portfolio managers prior to me joining and picking up the procurement from there.
I really love that relationship that you mentioned about the portfolio managers. Maybe explore that a little more later. Now, we go to our next slide. Josh, on this screen, there was a visual that was shared during webinar number 74. And so it was a visual of the acquisition program process. And there are typically 4 phases of the acquisition program process. And let me know in the chat if you were there for that webinar 74. You remember that is my program manager from outer space. Let us know if you were there. But Josh, on there, we learned that those 4 phases of that process define the problem, the need, right? The acquisition process, identify alternatives and resource requirements, analyze, select, develop and evaluate capabilities, the obtain phase, and then maintain, produce and maintain capabilities that produce, deploy, support, dispose. Now, this was from the program management perspective. And so we learned that contracting office typically becomes involved around the obtain phase, right? And so we then added another graphic to show what the procurement process for the contracting office typically looks like. And so here we see you added that in that obtain phase, typically in that procurement process, they're determining the requirement, planning the requirement, obtaining funding, soliciting the industry, selecting the source, awarding the contract, administering, and then eventually closing. Now, Josh, when you see these graphics, could you explain to the audience, when you see this, how does the acquisition program process relate to the procurement process?
Well, you mentioned that typically the contracting officer becomes involved at the obtain phase of the acquisition program process. When I look at these 2 graphics, I immediately see that the procurement process on the right can fit into nearly any of those 4 phases of the acquisition program process on the left. I see opportunity for the procurement process to be applied in the analyze select phase through really a lot of the innovations that are out there, such as the prize competitions or the broad agency announcements where government is inviting ideas and alternative solutions from industry. And then from there, the government is analyzing those alternatives and ultimately selects one of them to be the solution to that problem that was identified in the need phase, right? Then from there, we after they've analyzed and they've now selected a alternative or a solution to that problem, they've got to go out and obtain it, right? They've got to develop those capabilities, and typically government can put a contract in place for that, and that's where that procurement process comes into play again. After that capability is developed, and we've evaluated and we decided, hey, this works. This seems like it's going to work. Then we need to move it now to the 4th phase of the acquisition program process, which is producing it, right, deploying it, and then supporting it through its life cycle. And government uses a contract for that. So that's another area where the procurement process comes into play. So while these are 2 separate and distinct processes, the government could potentially use the procurement process to move its program through each of those phases of the acquisition life cycle. And in the case of Pivot, FEMA executed the Pivot development contract in the obtain phase, and then FEMA moved that developed Pivot capability into production by awarding the Pivot operations and maintenance contract to maintain and support that Pivot capability. But Monica, when there's something else that I see when I look at these graphics. I see two processes that are ripe for collaboration, communication, and coordination between the program office and the procurement office. In my career, I have found that program offices really appreciate when the procurement office is involved early, and not just early in the procurement process, but also early in the acquisition program process too. And likewise, the procurement office also appreciates when the program office remains engaged throughout the entire procurement process.
All right, thank you for that overview, Josh, and thank you for, yes, the collaboration and what you see there, the importance of being early. And we see some in the chat of just the importance of involving earlier. We'd love to know, we have a poll up of, a poll up of how early in the acquisition program process phase is your program office and contracting office working together? All right, and so we're going to go over those results just a second. You go ahead and take that poll. All right. Now, Josh, thank you for that. When you think of those things and why it's beneficial, oh, today's webinar itself is really focusing on why it shouldn't be this hard to improve the procurement experience for both the contracting program and all who are part of the procurement process. Now, we're going to go over the poll results really quickly, but Josh, I'm going to put a question in your mind and put it in, and maybe, it can grow like a flower of the answer. I really want to hear some of the tools and strategies you use during the pivot procurement to ensure program office involvement and collaboration, and really hear how you weeded out any obstacles to success. But before you give that answer, Chase, can we cover that poll?
Absolutely, Monica. So it looks like the majority of our responses, 80% of those responses are A, defining the need phase. So it looks like we are starting to communicate pretty early with each other. So that's really great. And it's increasing. We're at 81% now. So and it looks like the other responses were all about 5% each later on. But great to see that everybody is starting to communicate very early on with that define the need phase.
All right, thank you. All right, so Josh, how did you weed out any obstacles to success?
So first, I would say that, I want to preface this by saying that effective collaboration between program and procurement office is really super critical to the success of any procurement, right? By working together, communicating, coordinating early, the contracting officer can ensure that the needs and expectation of the program are clearly understood and met. And I feel that it's this type of partnership that allows the CEO and really the entire procurement team to be proactive rather than reactive. And we're able to really leverage the unique experience and expertise of both program and contracting to make better decisions and to get a better mission result. With Pivot, and really with my time at FEMA and working with the PIL, I would learn some really good best practices that I continue to use even in my organization that I lead today. And working with the PIL on Pivot, we leveraged biweekly sprint chats, which were those quick 15-minute meetings where program, contracting, legal, we all came together to update each other on our progress. And that really created a lot of transparency and trust amongst the team. So each of these 15-minute biweekly chats, we had the same agenda, right? What did you accomplish in the last 2 weeks? What are the things that we need to accomplish in the next 2 weeks? And are there any current challenges or obstacles that any of us are facing, and how can we help each other overcome those challenges? So sometimes from those sprint chats, we identified issues that we needed to work through together. And, maybe it was hashing out evaluation criteria or finalizing performance metrics for our PWS. While we wouldn't use the 15-minute meeting to try to hash those things out, we would schedule a follow-up meeting, which was a longer meeting, typically 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And we call those meetings jam sessions. And despite how long those meetings might have been, it was always times, well spent working through whatever issues we needed to move forward on.
Okay, all right. So, and I heard that you're still using those things at your current agency. Now, what were some of the benefits of those jam sessions? Were you using that to formulate any like evaluation criteria?
Yeah, I mean, we used it for several different documents or just, phases of the acquisition planning and solicitation development process that we need to just really collaborate and work through together. I remember with Pivot, we utilized scenario-based questions in our evaluation criteria. So we used a jam session to develop those questions. And I just want to say that using scenario-based questions, this is my first time doing it in a procurement as a CO, but it was incredibly effective in helping FEMA identify and select the company that offered the best value solution, right? The questions we developed for Pivot, they simulated real world challenges that the program could encounter. And that allowed us to assess how potential contractors would think, plan, and respond to specific situations. And it really helped us distinguish between those companies that say they can deliver on paper versus the ones who can really deliver and perform in practice.
Hey, Josh, you made a good point there about those jam sessions and those biweekly sprint chats. Kind of curious, in the chat, everyone out there, are you all doing jam sessions with your program office or program office with your procurement office and these biweekly sprint chats as well, where you're connecting and collaborating together with your program office? Let us know in the chat. Is this something that you all are using out there on a consistent basis? I guess we're interested to see what they say too.
And even if you're not, I see here, Josh, you were willing to try something new. So maybe this is something that people are willing to try. That's important of those relationships.
I don't know, Josh, I don't know if you're seeing this out there. Lots of no's out there from everyone. Any recommendations for all those people that are potentially not using jam sessions or biweekly sprint chats? Any recommendations that you have for everyone out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to try it. It really helps to foster that trust and create that transparency. It helps to keep the procurement on pace, on target too. And then what I really like about it, I'm a pick up the phone type of guy, right? We get a lot of emails all day, and I feel like oftentimes you may be familiar with that kind of that back and forth process when you're kind of lobbing documents back and forth with the program office over the fence and putting your comments in back and forth. Sometimes it's just easier to get on a quick call or spend a couple hours, one day, during your week to just work through whatever potential issue that you're experiencing. And you'll save some time on the back end if you just invest that time on the front end. So I would encourage everyone to give it a try.
Like that, even, email is not collaborative, right? Picking up the phone, really like hearing that. So that segues right into some relationship building. So during webinar 74, Josh, the Pivot PM, John Mosley, he shared some of the expertise that PMs appreciated from contracting, such as early business advice, market research innovations, advice with the end in mind, new ideas. When you were watching that recording, what were some of your initial thoughts when you heard these from John?
Oh, I agreed 100%. I think everything John said was spot on. I could not agree more.
All right. And considering your time at FEMA and now in your role as head of contracting activity, what's some expertise, if we had to put that flower mic back out to you, what expertise do CEOs appreciate of PMs? What are some things that can really help weather those April showers and bring us May flowers?
So I as a CEO myself, I know that CEOs greatly appreciate that diverse expertise that program managers bring to the table. Technical knowledge, right? That's a given. I know CEOs, we trust that no one is going to know or understand the program better than the PM. But some additional expertise or soft skills that come to mind that I know CEOs really appreciate. We appreciate when PMs are proactive planners, right? Procurement planning and risk management, that is crucial. And PMs who can anticipate potential issues and plan accordingly, right? Starting acquisition process early as possible, engaging the contracting office as early as possible. That really enables the CO to develop a more robust and a more comprehensive acquisition strategy. And that's going to help minimize risk and any potential impact from delay. Additionally, I think that CEOs really appreciate when PMs are flexible, adaptable, right? Able to adjust and to adapt to changing circumstances and changing environments, changing requirements. I mean, that's a highly valued skill set, especially in federal acquisition, because we all know that policies and acquisition regulations and even technology, they're always changing. PMs who approach those challenges with a solution-oriented mindset, they really can help the CEO overcome those obstacles and find innovative ways to work through those things and to meet, the goal of the procurement. And then lastly, I would say that clear communication. That's another one that I just know CEOs appreciate when there's that clear channel and clear line of communication between them and the program manager. Program managers who articulate their project requirements, their constraints, program goals. That really helps to ensure that everyone is on the same page. And that type of clarity will prevent misunderstandings, and it helps the CEO to better align those expectations from the start.
And there was a comment in the chat as well about kind of missing the face-to-face meetings and the productivity of them being invaluable. And there really are. I know the face-to-face is great when we have those as well. We're away from each other, turning cameras on Teams, lots of collaboration things that can be done with the Teams itself right in our virtual meetings. And so a lot of tools out there that can really get that engagement up, working together, breakout rooms, that can actually make it look like, take it even better sometimes than being in person. But I know in person is always fun too.
Hey, David, I'd really like to hear from the audience. For those out there listening, can you think of any other expertise that contracting appreciates from PMs, or maybe even soft skills that CEOs and PMs appreciate?
Just dropped it in the chat for everyone too, so you can see it, and maybe the vice versa as well. Maybe the things that PMs appreciate from contracting as well. So let's see what you say in the chat. What feedback do you have? What are some things all the PMs out there do you appreciate from your CEOs, and what are some things that you appreciate the contracting from your PMs? Let's see what we got here. We got legal, decisive behavior. Oh, that's interesting. Making a decision. What do you see there, Monica?
I like that. It's like respect both ways. That is so important. Patience. Trust and communication is a lot of communication. Are we talking about email communication or face-to-face, phone? You want effective communication. Lots of communication there.
Josh, there was one there I saw, availability. Have you ever heard anyone say that they couldn't get a hold of someone, whether it's the CEOs can't get a hold of PMs or the PMs can't get a hold of the CEOs?
Yeah, I think that happens maybe a lot more than what we're used to in this post-COVID environment. I mean, I remember the days where I used to be able to get up right from my desk in headquarters and just walk over to the PM's desk or walk over to the core's desk and be able to talk through things. Now I know that's a little bit more challenging in a virtual environment, where I think sometimes there's maybe just some hesitancy to maybe call someone because you don't want to be bothering them. But I mean, David, you offered just some really good suggestions that can really help just improve that connection when you do get a hold of your partner on a call, right? Turning those cameras on. Or even, once if you're having a meeting, instead of getting right down to business, I mean, spend a couple minutes just connecting, right? Just trying to understand the person a little bit better. And I think that really helps to foster those relationships. And the better relationship you have, I tend to find that it's a little more easier to get a hold of people when you need them.
Absolutely, Josh. I think, being comfortable with each other is really important when we're talking about communication. So moving on, Josh, another project you worked on while at FEMA was the Recovery Technology Programs Division Blanket Purchase Agreement. This was a FAR Part 8.405-3 $75 million BPA. Could you tell us a little bit about that procurement and when you became involved?
Yeah, so I was assigned to lead the RTPD BPA procurement in FY21. So that was about a year out from when I started on the Pivot O&M procurement. RTPD is a division within the Recovery Director. The Recovery Director is a really large office with several different divisions and branches and teams. RTPD is responsible for all of the IT within that directorate. So RTPD, they were unfamiliar with the procurement innovation and the PIL. So I remember my experience working with them. It felt like it took a little more pushing and pulling to get them on board with some of the PIL techniques that we wanted to use for RTPD BPA. Unlike the pivot team, though, right, who had already been introduced to the PIL prior to our time working together on the pivot O&M procurement.
For those in the audience, the RTPD BPA involves technical assistance for application development, sustainment, and integration services for the Recovery Program Office IT systems. So Josh, you mentioned there were a lot more selling that you had to do with the techniques, and it sounds like this became a PIL project too. So let's talk about that. Next slide, please.
All right, so here we have an overview of both those procurements, Josh, that you had the ability to work on. So on the left side here, you see two columns. One column is for the Pivot FY 2020. One is for the RTPD FY 2021 BPA. And we have what those actually evaluation strategies were for each of those. Now on the right side, you can see a list of procurement innovations that were used for both the projects. A lot of innovative techniques on your end that you employed for both of these procurements. But let's start on the left side, Josh. We're going to start on the left side for everyone, just so you can get the bearings. Josh talked about the pivot. So you can see what was done the first go around on this pivot one. And so we had a two-phase approach with an advisory down select. As I mentioned before, this is 16.505 procurement. Took about 100 plus days, about 140 days from issuance of the solicitation award, $134 million. Josh, can you go over everyone, kind of just high level, really quick, what that phase one, what strategy you used as part of that phase one there?
Sure. So as you already mentioned, we used all of those procurement innovations on the right. We use those in both procurements, but I think when you look at pivot versus RTPD, the way we use some of these techniques may have varied slightly. When you look at pivot in our phase one, factor one, we evaluated demonstrated prior experience. And the way we went about that is we conducted that through a virtual interview, right? So we sent out a prior experience form where interested companies would, just provide some basic information about themselves and the experiences that they wanted to present to us. And then we conducted those virtual interviews, and we're able to talk to the companies about their experience after they presented it.
Okay, excellent. So you did a virtual in phase one here. And then for that particular procurement, you had that advisory notification and then went into phase two. Again, same thing. Can you give a brief overview of this phase two for the pivot procurement, what that looked like?
Yeah, so for phase two in pivot, we kept with the virtual theme. It worked out really well in phase one, worked out really well again in phase two for technical approach and the price factor. We had the companies that were advised to move forward to phase two. They submitted a list of their representatives who were going to be attending the oral presentations. They also were required to submit a written PWS because we went out with a statement of objectives. So in return, they proposed a performance work statement. Along with that performance work statement, they also proposed a quality assurance surveillance plan, a QASP. And then, of course, they provided their written business quote as well. But we did conduct oral presentations during phase two, and also conducted interactive dialogue immediately following those presentations.
That's awesome. So you did almost like a virtual oral presentation in phase one and phase two for that one. Now, fast forward 1 year, Josh. All right, so 1 year later, that was your first PIL project. We just covered that. 1 year later, though, you have this RTPD BPA, and you just mentioned just a couple seconds ago that team, it took a little more selling, right? That push and pull. So was there anything different between the two procurements when you actually went to that RTPD BPA?
Yeah, just some minor differences in the way that we employed the same techniques, right? When we look at phase one, factor one, instead of doing the virtual interviews like we did in Pivot, we did written responses. So we provided questions, asking questions about the offerer's experience and performance on similar or relevant IT systems. And then they provided that response back to us in writing, and we evaluated those. I think the reason why we did that, I think the program office for RTPD was just a little gun shy about oral presentations and engaging with industry in a virtual or even an in-person setting. I think they felt a little uncomfortable with that. We did explain to him, hey, this worked really well with Pivot. What do you think about trying this out for, Factor One with RTPD? I never want to, as a CEO, I never want to make decisions in a vacuum, right? I don't want to direct or tell people, hey, this is the way it has to be. We're a team and we're all working towards the same mission and the same goal. So I listened to my program office, and they felt more comfortable, getting a written responses for prior experience. That didn't cause me any heartburn. So I said, hey, let's go for it. And and that's what we did.
I think that's very important there for Josh, for everyone to hear. So Josh worked with the program office on the second one, the RTPD BPA. He adapted what he had for the first time, made it fit this particular requirement, but worked with them to determine what were they comfortable with. What should we do here? I think that's a good lesson learned for everyone out there. You can take something as a starting place from a previous procurement, but adapt it to fit your requirement and work with your program office. But I want to hear from everyone in the chat. Is that something you all are practicing? Contracting officers out there, PMs working with the contracting office. Are you having this engagement with your contracting and program office on your evaluation strategy from the beginning? Or is this something you're just copying and pasting from the previous time and going with it because it worked before? Let us know in the chat. All right, and I think we're going to hop over to the next slide here.
And so, Josh, I really like the we're team, not making decisions in a vacuum. Why do you feel it's important to build those, what we call those budding relationships, and not simply just tell the customer what to do? Maybe everyone doesn't have a green thumb.
I really love all the plant and flower vocabulary today. So building strong relationships with our PMs and our program offices, that fosters a more collaborative environment where both contracting and program office are working together towards that common goal. And when we build those relationships based on mutual respect, as I heard earlier in the chat, as well as understanding, I think it encourages open communication and promotes that free exchange of ideas, which is essential for identifying the best solution. Directing the program office, when the CEO directs the program office on what to do, when to do it, I think that just creates a very transactional type of dynamic, and that may limit creativity and limit innovation and hinder trust and transparency. Instead, as CEOs, we want to take a very partnership approach where both program office and procurement office have bought into the success of the program and the procurement together. And now we're able to leverage each other's expertise and experience and insights to address any sort of challenges and optimize the outcomes. I think this approaching procurement with that very collaborative spirit is going to lead to more informed decision making, right, and create that deeper alignment between the program and the contracting office on the agency's mission and the goals. And it positions the CEO and the program office to be more agile and to be responsive to just the evolving needs of the agency and the public that we serve. So I want to encourage, CEOs to really lead the charge on building that collaboration with the program office, and then even, keeping it alive even after the procurement has been completed.
Okay. And we see all these and the really good things in the chat of what the team is sharing. So
yeah, it seems like there's a lot of collaboration going on there. I saw some no's though earlier on that they're not doing that collaboration, right?
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of yeses going on. Even this one that says my CEO did discuss potential options. Maybe the tide is changing. They have a great CEO.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe the tide is changing.
That's awesome.
All right. Josh, kind of segueing on some of the comments in the chat and that webinar, our program partners came on and shared about what the acquisition program process was. Do you feel like it's the responsibility of the contracting office to translate that procurement process to the program or to those that are, what's important in making that relationship bloom?
Yes, absolutely. As CEOs, it's our job to translate our procurement knowledge and our contracting expertise and to use that to make the procurement easier for the program offices to navigate and to understand and to facilitate the success of the procurement from start to finish. I believe that one of the primary responsibilities of a CEO is to manage procurement and business risk, right? Managing risk. Strong relationships between the procurement office and the program office, that really enhances trust and transparency. And when program offices and their PMs feel heard, they feel supported and valued, they're more likely to share critical information and their concerns much earlier in the procurement process, which is going to allow the contracting officers to better address potential issues proactively rather than reactively. And this not only improves the efficiency, also the effectiveness of the procurement process, but it's going to reduce risk and it's going to enhance the overall quality of the procurement outcome.
Monica, if you don't mind, I'm gonna bud in real quick. I have a question for Josh. Sandra is out today, so Josh, can you tell us the truth? She may listen to the recording now. Do you ever disagree with your PIL coach?
So Sandra's not here, right? All right. So Sandra was my PIL coach on both RTPD and Pivot. And Sandra is very risk tolerant, and I truly appreciate that about her. So she was pushing me and not in a bad way. She was challenging kind of some of my beliefs as a contracting officer, because this is my first exposure to procurement innovation, and I think she really did a good job of challenging me and challenged the way that I thought about different procurement concepts and acquisition strategies. And it was challenging to navigate that in the moment, because I did have while Sandra is risk tolerant, I also had a procurement attorney who's rather risk adverse. So I had this push and pull where I'm kind of in the middle, where Sandra may be challenging me to think about outside the box on this one thing, but then my procurement attorney, he's more risk averse, so he's kind of pulling me back in another direction. But again, what I appreciated about that sort of dynamic was that it gave me an opportunity to learn from both perspectives, right? And to be able to have a holistic, so it's very holistic input that helped to inform the decisions that I made, as a contracting officer.
Thank you for that, Josh. All right. Love hearing that, of the just respecting, that goes back to what was in the chat, of respecting both points of views. All right, we're on to another activity. We appreciate all the responses in the chat. We want to know, how are you building relationships? I want to hear some more of that, because I saw some in there. Or how could you build some relationships with your program and or contracting office? Maybe you've heard something that Josh has said. Could you nurture those relationships?
Yeah, we have a word cloud here. So in this box here, in that middle of the page, right next to the slide, go ahead and type anything that comes to mind here. That you would, how are you building your relationships with your program and or contracting office? Let's hear from all of you. Let's see what you have to say. Ooh, Teams meetings, phone calls. Oh, I saw one. Delivered donuts. Oh, I want that. That's awesome. Fruit communications.
Someone said jam sessions. Maybe someone's going to try them.
I want some donuts delivered periodically. Beg for help. That's a good one. Whole weekly listening meetings. Is anything you see here, Chase?
Let's see. A lot of comms. Communication is strong in here. Ask questions. Yes, absolutely. Ask those questions.
Josh, anything you see out there on your end that stands out?
The jam sessions caught my attention, because I'm a huge proponent of that. So let's keep the jam sessions going. If you haven't tried those, please do.
I like the weekly meetups as well. Check-in text. Oh man, if someone had my phone number is sending me text messages all day, I guess that's quicker than doing emails. Donuts delivery. Yeah, the donuts. I want that. Food. These are all great ideas. This is awesome. All right. Yeah, keep this up. So for everybody looking for ideas, here's some awesome ideas right here. Refer back to the webinar. You can see all the chat too.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you're getting some ideas from the others in the audience. Now, Josh, you ended up, after DHS, you ended up planting seeds at other agencies. You're currently the HCA at FRA. And so really want to hear how you've continued to ensure those relationships bloom and truly harvest some of those great ideas you learned in your previous role. What are some things that you've done specifically at FRA that has really caused some great success?
Yeah, so I mean, I've worked at a number of agencies in my career, including DHS, and from a previous agency and brought it to my next one. And I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as plagiarism or being a copycat in the federal government. If it worked at one agency, you can figure out a way to make it work at your current agency, right? In some way, shape, or form. It may not always be an exact fit, but you can tailor it to make it work for you and the program offices that you support. So with that in mind, there are a couple things that I brought over to FRA from DHS. As mentioned earlier, I talked about how FEMA has portfolio managers that work with the CO and the program office very early on in the acquisition process, right? To help, put those PR packages together and then get that submitted over to the CO. And then from there, the FEMA portfolio managers are kind of hands off from there. But I really liked how that worked at FEMA. And I also really enjoyed my time working with the PIL on those two procurements for Pivot and RTPD. So at FRA, we recently established our own acquisition portfolio managers. We put a little twist on it, right? So our acquisition portfolio managers, they do function in the same way that the portfolio managers at FEMA function, where they're working with our program offices very early on in the process, helping them to identify their need, define their need, put those documents together, conduct market research, and come up with their cost estimates. But then they also serve as similar to PIL coaches as well, where they are proponents of procurement innovation. They will coach the program office and the CO through a procurement, through the solicitation and evaluation process. So we've sort of fused the two roles together. And as a result, our program partners and our COs, they really appreciate having this increased level of support from our portfolio managers that starts at the very beginning of the acquisition program process all the way through the award phase of the procurement process.
That's really good to hear, Josh. Now, have you done any strategic partnerships if you're there at FRA?
Yes, one strategic partnership that I'm really fond of is the partnership that we have developed with our Chief Financial Office. They have invited us to join their conversations with the program offices during the budget formulation and spend planning process. Right. So I'm putting some of my senior acquisition leaders and our portfolio managers into the room with the finance office and the program office to help develop those budgets. So now we're in the room where we're able to ask acquisition related questions. We're able to help the program offices kind of think about as they're formulating their budget, thinking about, okay, what contracts of mine are expiring in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and how much money should I be setting aside in my budget to make sure that I can, if I need to recompete, that I have the funding to do so. Am I thinking about, is the program office thinking about escalation, right? What $1 today is not going to be $1 5 years from now, right? So we're helping those program offices kind of develop, okay, what's the proper escalation rate to ensure that we have enough budget for this recompete 3 or 4 years later. So this has been, I think, very, very helpful to the program offices. It also helps our office, the acquisition office, because now we're able to get kind of a sneak peek, right? A preview of what program offices are planning to procure in these upcoming fiscal years. And that allows us to better align our resources to support them.
That sounds like a really great partnership, Josh. Josh, there's a question in the chat, and maybe we can answer this in maybe 20 seconds or less. Do you think that the portfolio managers are better situated under contracting shops or within the program office, or does it make a difference? That's a perfect question to a head of contracting activity.
That's a great question. I love that question. My position is that they are best utilized sitting in the procurement office. I think because we want them to be, ideally 1102s or 1101. We want them to have that procurement experience and be able to speak our language so that we can ensure that they're able to translate our language effectively to the program office. So that's my position. I think they're best served on the procurement side.
Thank you for that question in the chat. Thank you, Josh. All right, so Josh, it shouldn't be this hard. I think in maybe 60 seconds or so, telling us, from a leadership perspective, and we kind of segue right in there, how you're empowering your CEOs
and any resources or anything that you've given them from your perspective.
Yeah, some resources that I've given my CEOs, because I'm a huge proponent of procurement innovation, and I understand that not my staff hasn't always been familiar with procurement innovation. So to help kind of break down that barrier, we came up with a procurement innovation technique resource checklist, right? And it has just a list of just different, not all the PIL techniques, but a few of them, right? The ones that are, I think, more easier to implement. And we've laid them out in a table. We've added some very useful information to describe the technique, when it might be useful, when it might be helpful, different links to documentation, to sample documentation that contains solicitation verbiage on how to implement those techniques. And I challenge my CEOs to pull that document out, or keep it handy when you're engaging and you're initiating those very early acquisition planning conversations with the program office, right? Start thinking about how you can use some of these innovative procurement techniques to help manage risk and break down any sort of barriers that you might experience during the conducting the actual procurement.
All right. Thank you for that, Josh. And for those, that actual checklist, that resource is in the download box. All right. Josh, we really do thank you for being here. We love how you're empowering your contracting officers, really fostering and encouraging that partnership, and really meeting your customer where they are, and growing those technical, helping your team grow those technical, plus those soft skills that you've done for yourself and also for your team. So thank you, Josh, so much for being on this webinar.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to remind everybody that the Procurement Innovation Neighborhood is still going. We meet every second Wednesday. This coming month in June, I'll be hosting. Please attend our second Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:30.
All right, and next up, we have Jade Gaston. So thrilled to have you today on the webinar. Jade, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do here at U.S. Secret Service?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jade Gass, and I'm really happy to be here. I am a contracting officer team lead. I am pretty new to the role, less than 6 months. I work on the OPO branch, which stands for Office of Protective Operations, that basically handles everything under protecting the president. Whenever he moves, we are sure to have contracts, and we support everyone who supports him.
That's awesome. So we just heard from Joshua Jordan, HCA over at FRA, and how he did procurement innovation with FEMA, how it's transitioned, and he's still using those things as an HCA. And now we're going to go into what Jade is doing here at U.S. Secret Service in her position as a team lead and with their team at U.S. Secret Service. So Jade, can you kind of show how are things set up from an organizational perspective there at U.S. Secret Service? I think this will really help tee up and understand who you're working with, what you're doing, and what your organization looks like.
Okay, well, of course, we have an HCA, and then under him, we have 5 divisions. And within those 5 divisions, we have 5 branches. Again, as I mentioned, my branch specifically handles presidential protection. We have other branches that handle everything from investigations, fraud. We have a CIO shop that, handles all the IT buys. So we have a wide variety of things that we, kind of support within my organization.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And now within your team itself, you have, I see here, 6 contract specialists supporting 8 program offices. Now, are those specialists assigned to just one specific program office, or they can help out any one of those?
Well, all of the specialists, including and me as a team lead, we support all of the program offices. Sometimes they may be in charge of some of the larger buys or projects individually, but as a whole, we service all 8 of our program offices together.
That's awesome. Okay, so you got 8 separate gardens or program offices, a fruitful harvest to help meet their missions. Now, what does this relationship with your customer look like? And how are you working with those program offices?
Well, I think we work beautifully with our program offices. We work tirelessly to make sure that we're providing good customer service and that we're collaborating with them very frequently and throughout the whole life cycle of the procurement. That's really important to us. So especially having 8 different customers, it is really important that you're touching base with people as often as needed to make sure that things are running smoothly.
Okay, and now, now, why do you feel that it's important to engage early in the procurement process? I think we heard earlier that a lot of people are engaging all the way up to that needs phase, really in the beginning, which is awesome. I know that's not always the case, but so why, from your perspective, sitting in this team lead position, do you feel it's really important to engage early in the procurement process?
Yeah, it's most certainly is important. We like to engage with our customers really before they even have the PR package, while things are kind of being conceptualized before they've even finished all their documentation. We really like for them to feel comfortable to come to us. Normally it's myself or the branch chief, so where we can like talk out the ideas of what they need, why they need it. We go over their market research with them. We let them know if it's good enough, or maybe we need to do a little bit more research. But we're able to help them with that early, so when they submit the PR package, it's a much more substantial of a package than maybe if we hadn't touched base before. We make sure at least there's no like blaring deficiencies within it or anything like that. So by the time they give us a procurement package, we're able to roll with it, because we're all working towards the same path because we're on the same page.
That's awesome. So I'm sure the audience would like to hear this, but are there any strategies or tools that your office is using to continue to build those relationships, to give them what they need to help get what you need?
Absolutely. We do have some tools and checklists that we share with them that my amazing branch chief has developed. One of the checklists basically lays out different options for them based off of threshold, whether it's a supplier service, whether it's competitive or a set aside or even a sole source. And all these checklists provide them with the documentation that they'll need, with some of the information that should be included in the documentation, some brief overviews of what the next steps would be. And the really cool thing about these checklists is that a lot of them are embedded with links, so they could click a link and go directly to the JNA that they need, or go directly to the IGCE template. So the checklists and templates are extremely helpful to them, and we share that with them early on. So by the time they are submitting the package, they know that they have, for the most part, met all the requirements of documentation before submitting the package.
Got it. Okay. So wow. So lots of information. So I'm actually curious in the chat. Do any of you have checklists that you're either providing your program office, just help guide through the procurement process, or what you need in the PR package, or from the program office side, do you all have access to a checklist that you're all using to kind of understand what needs to be submitted? So the chat. Ooh, seeing lots of yeses out there. That's positive. I actually would think otherwise. I would have guessed otherwise, but that's awesome. There's a lot of people out there that are using something similar. I know the ones you're mentioning here, we can actually find examples of those right in the chat too, what you're using. That's kind of cool. All right, so a lot of people out there have some checklists in one form or another that they're working with. But not only checklists for the program office side, I think you mentioned earlier that you also have one internally for your contracting officers as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We do have that. It's a little similar to the ones that the program office uses, but obviously our documentation is a lot heavier. So it does include the documentation that we from procurement should be expecting with a package based off of how it's getting procured. It lists everything that we need, who's supposed to supply it to us. And then in addition to that, it is a checklist that includes all the information that we also need to have in our file. It breaks it down into different sections. There's a pre-solicitation documentation that is needed, the documentation that you'll need for the solicitation, and then the award documentation. So you're able to look through this checklist and go down and make sure that you're hitting all the areas that you need to. In addition to that, it also includes some of the basic steps you should take, in what order you should be, handling certain things. So that is extremely helpful to the specialist and myself. Even as a CO, when I am reviewing one of the specialist files, I pull up the checklist every time just to make sure that there's nothing that I'm forgetting, and making sure that all the documentation is there as needed.
That's a great point, because I remember in our procurement culture survey, we've seen oftentimes that the program office mentions that things maybe aren't always consistent from one contracting officer to the next as to what's required in that procurement package. Maybe you all can put that in the chat. Have you experienced that at all? Maybe someone asked for one thing, one CO asked for one, or CS asked for one thing, another CO or CS asked for something different for the same type of requirement. So let us know in the chat if you ever run into that before, and maybe that CO checklist can help out there. Now, we have a poll here that I want to get your feedback on, everyone out there, while you're answering that, but here's the poll as well.
That's right, David. So while David and Jade were talking, we snuck another poll into your garden, otherwise known as the Adobe Connect page. How often do you meet with your program leads to discuss ongoing contracts?
All right, so answer that question. We're going to come back to that in just a bit, see what you answer here. But Jade, so what are you all doing throughout the year to keep that consistent engagement with your customers?
Well, on our branch, we meet with our customers very consistently. Myself, as the team lead, I have certain program offices that I meet with every single week. Usually it's on a Friday, either a Friday or a Monday. We're either wrapping up the week with it or we're starting the week with it. And they may have, much smaller buys, but, they're kind of quick. So we'll run through everything that we have with them and where we are, anything that they need from us, any questions that I may have. It gives me an opportunity to just briefly run through those questions and make sure that we're all tracking things at the same pace. And then I have some customers that I have some really large buys with, or, projects that are kind of ongoing, and we meet with them weekly as well. Myself, the program office is there, and sometimes the vendor is there as well. So we can, discuss whatever we need to discuss. I'm actually missing one of those meetings right now, but, it gives us an opportunity to, just make sure that we're touching base with everything and to make sure that we're on track, discuss any hiccups that may be happening, discuss any upcoming site visits, any modifications that maybe need to take place. So those are really important for us to meet very consistently. And when we have a standing meeting, it gives everyone the opportunity to come prepared because it's not an unexpected meeting. Everyone can come with an agenda in mind. And most of the time we share what the agenda is beforehand, so we can come with questions prepared and also answers prepared.
That's awesome. And Chase, we have a lot of responses already in the chat, or sorry, not the chat, the poll. What are some of the people saying out there? How often they meet with their program office?
That's right, David. It looks like 52% of folks meet pretty regularly, almost once a week. We're looking at 16% with about once a month. C, do emails count? 7%. That's a little too large of a number than we want. Maybe start reaching out some more. And D, only when there is an issue. Yeah, that's 25%. Really interesting results here. Make sure that you're trying to meet maybe a little bit more often than only when there's an issue. Maybe that way you can, prevent some of those issues in the future.
That's awesome. All right, so Jay, what are some things you've learned from those meetings, those weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings that you're having with these procurements and going over each one with your program office?
Well, one of the things that we definitely get a chance to keep track of is where we are with our milestones. We want to make sure that we're staying on pace with where we need to be at to get this, whatever it is, awarded on time, or whatever project to be completed, or whatever percentage we expect to be completed at. We've definitely discussed timeline really heavily. We, go over deliverables, making sure that they are being met. If this is post-award, pre-award, we're making sure that we have everything we need for the solicitation. We can discuss any evaluation factors. And I just think that the importance of these meetings is just the exchange of information, like Josh said earlier, just being able to be transparent. And it helps you to be comfortable to discuss any, concerns that the program office may have or that we from procurement may have. So just being able to consistently talk about those things, I definitely believe fosters a great deal of trust and respect and, information exchange.
That's awesome. And now you mentioned this with me before that you not only have in these meetings, that you're actually doing some trainings as well. And I saw in the chat earlier, Aisha mentioned this. What about trainings? Is that something possible? Do you all have trainings with your program office? And if you are is the program office finding, what are those trainings? And is the program office finding them helpful?
Yeah, we have trainings with our program offices, usually twice a year. The branch chief and myself will go, and any specialist who wants to participate, we go and we take all of our checklists and our templates, and we, sit down. It's a very, informal but very collaborative setting where the program office gets to bring in everyone who they, will be involved with us. And we go through all the documents and we let them know, what they're for. Sometimes you're filling things out and you don't exactly, know what it's for. But I noticed that helping explain to them why we need this information and how it pertains to the procurement process, it, really does help them. So we go over that. We go over all the, again, the different documentation that they'll need. We go over pulps for different types of buys. And so them having their checklist and us having our checklist and us training them and then them also sharing whatever information that we need to know. Sometimes we're, kind of rushing the program office a bit, but when they explain their processes to us, it helps us also to understand what areas we need to be patient in. So we're all just moving in the same direction when we're collaborate and, share our perspectives from our different roles in that way.
That's awesome. So you're doing that now. Are you doing that at the beginning of the fiscal year? Like new fiscal year rolls around, then you have those trainings so everyone, it's like that timeline set? Or does that also come up frequently during the fiscal year as well?
Well, it comes up, we usually, like I said, do it twice. We usually do it in the very beginning of the fiscal year. And that also gives us the opportunity to talk about, when we could expect to receive most of their packages, before things get crazy. And then we also do it a little later. We actually, again, we had one yesterday where we just sat down and kind of, went through the things that we already have in-house, went over if there are any other things that we can expect from them. Just touching base on how their packages are coming through and if there's anything that they can do better or the opportunity for them to express to us what areas they need us to provide a little more support in. So, we do it twice, but we will do it as often as needed. Sometimes it's more than that if they call and say, hey, we have some new agents, would you mind coming to do a training again? So we're pretty flexible.
That's awesome. I saw Sean Murphy out there said, yes, we have held trainings where we go over what is required of the PR package. That's awesome. And anyone else in the chat, are any of you doing these types of trainings for your program office? I guess on the program office side, have you received these similar kind of trainings from your contracting office? Let us know in the chat. Just want to get a quick pulse, see what you all are doing. And what about tracking trends? Is that something that you all are doing within your organization?
Absolutely. So from, the procurement shop, we have a workload tracker where we are, tracking our current work and we're tracking the contracts that we're doing administration on. And we're also tracking all the contracts that we've, awarded within the last few years. And that helps us to drastically streamline some of the procurements with our program offices because we can look back and see what the trends were. We can see what we've purchased and how long it took to purchase or, possibly some ways that we can condense some of these purchases to make it more efficient. And that tracker has been an amazing tool for us and the program office.
That's awesome. And now, I guess, why is it important? Why are you finding that it's important to track these trends?
Well, some of the things that we buy, we notice that we're buying them way more frequently than we really need to. We notice that some of the purchases that have been considered emergency purchases really maybe don't have to be emergency because if we look back over the few years, we see some of the same purchases around the same times, needed for the same program offices. So it allows us the opportunity to say, hey, maybe we should set up an IDIQ for this or a BPA instead of doing all these separate orders, or maybe we should make a 5-year contract if we're going to continue to buy this instead of just doing 1-year contracts over and over again. So, sometimes the program office just operates in the way that they've always operated. But when we can come to them with, hard facts about why something may be a little more efficient if we adjust, they're really open to that.
And now this tracker, when you have your weekly meetings with the program office, do you go over all of the requirements on there to make sure they're accounted for and to make sure everyone knows what's going on?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the tracker is really used in-house for myself and the specialist to, keep the information updated as a quick reference. And we also use it as a communication tool within procurement. But it's also available that when you're having these meetings with your program office, or you get that quick call, that happens very often where someone calls you from the program office and they need a quick status update, or, they have to brief up, so they need to know where procurement is. We have this available to us at all times that we can quickly say, this is where we are, this is the day the solicitation closes, or whatever information they need to know, as a quick reference tool. And everyone can see this that I work with. All the specialists can see it. My branch chief, our HCA even has access to it. So if there's any questions, they can come directly here. And a lot of times it avoids us getting those calls about where something is, because so many people have access to just look and see themselves.
Yeah, we have a few questions here. Sharon White asks, can someone provide the PIL webinar for evaluating proposals? There's a lot of them on the PIL webinar page, and different ways of evaluating based on the procurement sharing. We have one here for you, Jade, from Lisa. Says, is the tracker just a spreadsheet, or is there a system that it ties into with dashboards, etc.?
So it really doesn't tie into dashboards. We access it through our Teams, um, our branch Teams folder. So we can see it whenever anyone makes a change. We can all see what is happening in the tracker in real time, but it doesn't link to any other system.
Okay, awesome. Hey, maybe that's something, if anyone out there knows how to build a dashboard, maybe they could do that. And one thing before, all that answers people had about meeting with their office and training, I saw a lot of no's out there, so definitely an opportunity for you to do some training early in the procurement process. For the tracker tool itself, the spreadsheet template, we actually have that in the download section. So if you're curious as to what that is and what all is included, those additional cells, go ahead and click on that. But for now, I think we have an activity. All right. So we have an activity. Chase, can you read what the scenario is for everyone?
Sure thing, David. So the Flowers Program Office has begun identifying their procurement needs for FY25. The program office would like to engage with contracting more regularly throughout the year to discuss procurement status and identify areas of opportunity. The CO has agreed to meet on a bi-weekly basis.
All right, here's a setup. And now we have a question for you all. What are some questions a CO could ask a program office during a bi-weekly meeting? What are some questions? Let's see in the chat. What do you all think? What are some questions could you ask? Any issues? What can I do to help you? Those are some great ones. Oh, goals. That's great. Project updates. Anything you see here, Monica?
Are you running into issues? I see that coming up a lot. Anything on the horizon? I like that.
Ooh, there's a lot coming in here. All right, now let's see. Maybe we have another question too. Maybe there's another question here that we can ask. Oh, from the program office side, what are questions the program office could ask their CO? So we're switching that a little bit. What are some questions the program office could ask their CO in here as well? So let's see what everyone says. Oh, are there any issues with having what we want? Oh, that's a good one. Oh man, they're coming in so quick. How soon must I fund the process? Ah, there we go. Small business availability, that's a good question, right? So market research could be involved. Timeline, timeline for the procurement process. That's always good. Let's get a timeline together. These are awesome. These are great things to think about as well as you're doing your procurements.
All right. Thank you all for that activity. Now, David, Jade, I have to get into this conversation that's blooming. Jade, you shared about the emergency procurement request. I really like how you're not just tracking, but you're finding areas to bloom. Any other last sort of thing that you've seen of being able to identify those opportunities, any program offices you've really been able to help them better, be more efficient?
Sure. One of my favorite things about working on my branch is that we support the national security special events, which we call them NSSEs. So that's like all the big kind of conferences that the government hosts. So we have like the RNC and DNC, those are coming up. We have different conferences, all over the United States that we support. And our tracker has really helped us to be able to support these events in a much more efficient way. So some of the things that we track are the things that we're buying every year, kind of what I mentioned with the emergency purchase orders, the things that we're buying every year. What events do we actually have every year versus we only have, maybe every 4 years when there's an election, or maybe every other year. So we're able to track these trends and kind of stay on top of our program offices a lot earlier in the process. To say, hey, I know that you're going to need X, Y, and Z because we did this event last year. You might want to start putting your package in, or, let's look at what we did last year. Did that work for you? Was that the most efficient way for you? So it helps us to have these very collaborative ways of planning to get to where we need to be with these events in a much earlier time frame.
Mhm. It sounds really great. The collaboration, being able to know when things are happening, so if people change out, you're able to do that, really identifying those areas of opportunity. So Jade, it shouldn't be this hard, and it sounds like you found ways to make it a little easier. Before you go, what's something that you think any last recommendations for the DHS acquisition workforce? Anything that you feel is really important as you transition to that team lead role of just building those relationships?
Really just what this whole webinar is about, which is just the importance of relationships. I think it's very easy to get into the cycle of emailing back and forth, and you're telling them that you need something and you just wait the 2 weeks that you told them that you needed in without really touching base. But really communicating very frequently, formally and informally, with your program office about where you are with things, just touching base to see if they need any support, to see if there's a way that they could be supporting procurement better. I just think that it takes you so much further when you have that collaborative mindset, because you're working on this together. You both have the same goal in mind. So building that trust, it really helps take the procurement a lot further.
Thank you, Jade. We're so glad that you joined us today. Thank you so much for joining our webinar.
It was so
Thank
great.
you for having me.
Thanks, Jade. It's been so great having Jade and Josh on today. I think we're all ready to let our relationships grow and bloom. Just to recap some of these strategies and tools, you'll see those on your screen. Amongst others, early engagement will really improve collaboration, translate procurement to program mission partners, be patient, know the why. And before we go, I would love to hear from David how the PCS survey has bloomed.
That's right, everyone. Procurement culture survey, it ended last week on Friday. So thank you, everyone, for responding. We had 2,079 valid responses. The highest response rate went to FLETC overall. So shout out to FLETC, 27% response rate overall. And the highest response count among components was U.S. Coast Guard at 581. Great job, everybody. Great job. We'll have those survey results we sent up to your HCAs soon here, and we'll start digging into those and finding good initiatives for the next year to improve the procurement experience.
So as we get this popped up, we are launching our survey. Please take our survey. We really want your feedback. We are always looking to grow and improve. So if you go ahead and click on that link, we also dropped it in the chat. Please take just a few moments to answer our survey and give us that feedback.
We have the pin, as Chase said earlier, second Wednesday of the month, 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
As always, you can check out our PIL DHS Connect homepage at any time to see all of this great information.
The PIL yearbook for 2023 is available. Check it out now. Some great information on helpful resources and tools for you, and great stories as well.
And as for upcoming training, have a good summer. We'll keep you updated with some upcoming training in the fall.
Our PILcast series, 10 minutes or less, available innovative techniques for the whole procurement workforce. Check it out today, innovation technique number 52 out there. And just so you all know, we have 2 last polls as well. So be sure to take those so we can understand how we did today.
As always, we have our PIL idea competition. Please check it out on the PIL website on the DHS Connect page.
Join the 2,952 other DigiBadge holders out there, 5 webinars, and use 1 innovative technique.
And as always, you can always ask for PIL coaching support with a PIL one-pager.
Check out the PIL primer if you need a refresh on any techniques.
And the PTAI has moved. It's on acquisitiongateway.gov. Check it out.
Thank you all very much for joining us today. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next PIL webinar.